I didn't want to redo the entire presentation because of one mistake I made at the very beginning with the date. Today's date is January 25th in the year of all of us, 2026, not 25. I hope you enjoy the presentation. So, welcome to my presentation. It's titled The Hammer and the Flame. I wasn't going to do it until like the 6th of February, and I decided to do it today. It is Sunday, January 25th in the year of all of us, 2025. My name's Dan, and I'm an ex-order follower. I decided to do it today because we've got the frost giants attacking out here. Where I live, it's a blizzard. And with what I'm seeing, with the weaponization of law enforcement, the militarization of law enforcement, the blending of these two things, blind orders being followed, order followers not thinking for themselves, atrocities always being committed under the guise of some type of virtue. I felt like today would be a good day with what I woke up and seen in my news feed to go ahead and do this presentation for FUNL 5. And I'm very grateful that Chris Jensen, Will Keller invited me to FUNL 5. I'm very grateful and thankful for you, Will Keller, for doing the artwork for me. He did several different art pieces that will be in this presentation. And again, I'm very grateful. In 2022, he and John were the first ones to interview me after I became slightly, I don't even say known, but people started to say, hey, who's this guy? Because I had had a podcast for a few years. And April of 22, 411 information, I ended up doing an interview with none other than David Icke. And right after that, a bunch of things started happening, of course. I had my YouTube page was already under attack because I'd been posting truthful things since 2020, and that was the final straw. I got deplatformed. But Will and John had me on the Natural Freedom League, and they were the first ones to interview me. And again, I'm very grateful for that and all the interviews that I've done with people in the freedom community and the One Great Work Network, and which I'm happy to be a part of now. I woke up and seen all the stuff today and said, you know what? No, this is good. FUNL 5, freedom under natural law. And 5 is a very synchronistic number to me for many reasons, and it's going to come out in this presentation why. That is so. So, again, this is titled The Hammer and the Flame, A Soul's Journey. You see, a lot of anarchists have been order followers, especially like of the military kind. They get out of the military, they're pretty disenchanted, and they become anarchists, okay, or spiritual anarchists. We have to usually hyphenate that, so that way the general public knows we're not violent. What we're seeing now from quote-unquote America's heroes, that's violence. We're seeing it all over the world. It's chaos. I wasn't only a ex-military person, a former United States Marine, but I also was a cop for over 25 years, various jurisdictions, on different municipality levels, state, local, and federal. So I know what I'm looking at, and I don't like what I'm seeing. And I'm going to just get into my story. But the presentation is The Hammer and the Flame, A Soul's Journey. I want to give a little disclaimer before I get into this presentation. No statists were hurt during the making of this presentation. It's just a joke. During the presentation, I will jump around on my own timeline a bit. I will not be going in perfect chronological order. Also, I make no money for this. My YouTube page is not monetized. This presentation will have an almost mythic and most assuredly poetic and maybe even a slight romantic arc to it. Because life's not worth living if we don't have our imagination. And imagination is something that they want to take away from us. But my intention in this alignment, within a time frame required to complement our overall mission, which is unifying opposing forces, both internally and externally, in our war-torn world, to teach, inspire, and unify all beings to live in accordance with natural law, and to remember who we are, and that love is the law under all things, especially courage. Again, thank you, Will Keller, for your art. Chris Jensen for inviting me to this. It is an honor to be speaking at FUNL 5. I'm going to open up my presentation with something poetic. And it's called The Thunder Rite of Completion and Reunion Return to Dog's Run. She is the veil and the flame, and I am the hammer and the flame. I return not to prove my courage, but to seal the rite I began beneath the harvest moon. I had walked 3 nights, heard the growl, seen the sentinel, and held Mjolnir aloft for the white light of the Most High. I was given the Emperor and the Hierophant, structure and sermon, protection and proclamation. She was born of the High Priestess, the Empress, mystery and creation, psychic fire and sovereign love. It was the 18th the 9th day of the 9th month in a 9-year. I had fasted for 72 hours. Again, 7 plus 2 is 9. I returned for my 4th and 5th day. Again, another 9. Emperor and Hierophant I walk into the 9999 portal, and I did not falter. I didn't run from the growls or the howls. Hungry like the wolf, the white cat watched me from the shadows. The grove whistled thrice as I departed. Now I had returned to hear the 4th whistle. I did not fear my fate. I walked my post and observed everything within sight and hearing. I was the magician. I am the hammer. She is the flame. And she, my desert rose, is the veil and the flame. Together we rise, together we reign. And that's why I named partially this presentation The Hammer and the Flame. And with this snowstorm going nuts out here, and I jokingly say the frost giants are attacking, what better day, what more poetic day for a guy who pretends to be the high defender of Midgard to give this presentation. You see, imagination and childlike curiosity and wonder are things they try to steal from us from a very early age. Because if we have imagination and childlike wonder with that imagination, they can't control us. And with that imagination, we are able to come up with solutions to problems that they never thought we can come up with. The key to unlock the solutions to the darkness this planet has fallen to is imagination, and to return to that childlike, almost purity that all of us have still within us before the world robs it from us with their mind-controlled facilities of school and its contradictions. My name is Dan. I am an ex-order follower, and I have a tale to tell. If the hammer takes strength to wield, the flame takes love and transformation. As a cop, especially a federal cop in a medical facility, police and security services, I felt morally corrupt and spiritually bankrupt. I had to reforge myself. This meant overcoming the unhealthy coping mechanisms and addictions. I'm not happy with the way I dealt with my stress. I blame nobody. I don't even blame the stress. But I was smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes a day. I had an online porn addiction. I was drinking way too much. I was exercising. Even exercise, something healthy, could become unhealthy when you overdo it and don't give your body time to rest. I'm not really Thor. I wish I was. I don't know. Who knows? But with that said, this is the artwork by Will Keller. Thank you, Will Keller. The Hammer and the Flame, A Soul's Journey.
Thor, say something. Come on. Thor, you okay? I think he's dying.
He needs the axe. Where's the handle? Tree! Help me find the handle!
The allegory in that video is not lost on me. As I entered the forge, it was almost as if I was burning away the lies I told myself. That flame was the flame of truth that burns away the lies, and most importantly, don't lie to yourself. It was purification by fire. And not unlike that scene, nature came to my aid. Not a talking raccoon or a walking tree, but nature came to my aid. And we have to remember who we are. We have to remember nature. So, why did I get into law enforcement? Why do people get into law enforcement? What makes people want to go in the military? Like so many other times in history, we are formed through what we see, our nourishment, what we take into us. And I grew up watching G.I. Joe. You know, he fights for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe's there. more like, we know now that he fights for his masters. Wherever there's oil, it's a mockery of what we go to join and why we take the oath, and then what we find out we're really serving. Because we want to serve something greater than ourselves. And I was. But I realized it wasn't good. This is where, if you have a conscience, you're going to be at great war within yourself, because the contradictions will eat you alive. But in the 80s, we were in a post-Vietnam era. There was a lot of military operations going on in the world. And they wanted to glorify certain order-following jobs to get people, poor people, to volunteer to do them. So I joined the military, right? I went into the Marine Corps. But they glorified through TV, through entertainment, much like they do today. Nothing's changed. This was a poster from the United States Marine Corps back in the 80s. One of the most famous posters ever. Yeah, I want to be that guy. We just got done watching Johnny Rambo do all kinds of crazy stuff. Wow, I'm going to get like that? Yeah, think of a young man. And why you get into something, because you want to try to improve yourself, better yourself, and be a service to others. So you take an oath to protect and serve. You don't pay attention to the other stuff within that oath. If you're a good person, you're really paying attention to the protect and serve part. Police order following. It's made to look like it's such a virtuous thing on TV, even a humorous thing. And we can't help but always side with the underdog and the bad guys, or the good guys, I should say, right? The underdogs. Let me see something here. So it's like all journeys of the soul in this 3D realm. We begin as children. And as I began my journey as a child, I remember at age 5, there's that 5 again, driving around with my real father, God rest his soul. And he was like this, muscular guy. And as a 5-year-old, yes, he had definitely probably put me in my place at that time and yelled at me at times here and there. But he was a good dad. I have a lot of good memories of him in those formative years, and I am thankful for them. But, you look up to your dad like that, like he's some kind of superhero. And then all of a sudden, we'd see this strange-looking car that's black and white with these blue lights on top. And he'd be like, sit down, the police, they're going to get you. I don't want them to stop me and give me a ticket and get you. And then, like, oh my God. Who are these people that my dad's so afraid of? So that begins a certain curiosity. I started watching police shows, One Adam 12, and other police shows. And find out, the police are the good guys. Look at them chasing the bad guys. And I remember as a child always being really scared and nervous talking to my dad. Like, I don't want to grow up and be a bad guy. I hope I grow up and I'm a good guy. I really would have those conversations with him. And when we played cops and robbers, I always had to be the cop as a kid. 5, 6 years old. Something about my real dad. He was actually a bisexual. And this matters to the overall story. I'd say he wasn't even a bisexual. I'd say he was actually homosexual and he couldn't help it. But having been raised in the 50s, he tried to be as macho as possible, hence why he was a handyman. He could fix a car, he could build a house, he could fix anything. He lived a life of dreadful internalized toxic shame. And I love you, Dad. And that's One family curse I broke. The reason he fathered 2 sets of children, actually. I was the oldest in the second set. But the reason that's significant comes into play in 2 different ways many years later in my life. One, before I go any further, no, I'm not gay. Let me just put that out there. I love women, a little too much actually. Not in a weird way, I promise. But it was significant. And something I'm going to tell about my stepdad. But it was real significant in February 2014. When I walked into a nursing home and he was there barely breathing because I found out he was dying. I hadn't seen him in many years. And he opened his eyes and seen me. And he was like, "Oh, Danny." And I was crying. I couldn't help myself. I'm like, my God. All this emotion. And it's like after I got out of the Marine Corps, he never hung out with me a whole lot. Like maybe I was this real manly guy. He was ashamed of himself. I'm sitting there crying. Crying like a baby. And he says, "Oh, honey, don't cry. We all have to die." He was gay, huh? Those were the bravest words I ever heard up to that point. Here he was, consoling his child while he was dying. It's worth saying. So when I was 6 years old, he and my mom separated for reasons I don't know and don't care. Probably because he was gay. And enter my stepdad. I'll call him the evil stepdad, although I have forgiven him. God rest his soul as well. He died a horrible death of cancer. But my stepdad, I remember him saying to me as a kid that your dad's a fag. He's gay. Now I'm 6 years old. What's that mean? What is that? It's obviously bad. What is it? And then he's like, he F's other men. F's other men. What is that? You know what that is it's sexualizing children. It's something he shouldn't have done. And then he was an alcoholic that beat us and beat my mother badly. Which is another reason why later on I became a cop, because I swore I would never allow myself to be hurt again, or anyone I love, or anyone else. And then people would call the police and they would show up and they would take the bad man away. Well, that made the police even more heroic to me. One time that I didn't let be known until about 2017, after I nearly died. I let this be known after years and years and years. He had inappropriately touched me once as a kid, about 7 years old. I didn't exaggerate it. There wasn't penetration. He breathed on my neck, touched my rear end, and like he was testing me or something. When I revealed this to my family, their reactions were tragic. I know why so many people, so many years without telling these things. And I wasn't going to, walk on a man's grave or, exaggerate anything. He never did it again. And there was never any, sex, per se. Just what he did was not appropriate. And I imagine this is a story many people have at one point or another. But my family's, my immediate family, my brothers, my mom, my other stepdad, God rest his soul too. God rest my mom's soul. They've all gone. I love them all. I've even forgiven my stepdad. And that's for real forgiving, not that bullshit kind of forgiving, that just so you feel better. And there's nothing wrong with not forgiving somebody, but I digress. At age 6, I got hit by a car. I died. I flatlined. And I remember being able to see the lights and all these people standing around me, but I also had another perspective. I was like in a corner looking down at myself at all these people, and I counted 12 people standing around me. And then I remember having this really weird dream. I remember this is the mind of a child. But in this weird dream, there were all these mean bowling balls, like real tall, mean bowling balls, like frost giants. And I was scared to death to get through them. And I was this little small bowling ball that was scared. And then all of a sudden, this bit of courage came over me, and I started building up a head of steam. And I rolled through them. And then I woke up in the recovery room as they were putting a sponge of water in my mouth because I had just had surgery that saved my life. They brought me back. I had flatlined. I had actually clinically died. It's important to the overall story. This is a picture of me at Marine combat training in May to mid-June of 1991. 1991. Some other basic info growing up. I grew up in an inner city, Cleveland. We jokingly call Cleveland Philadelphia's little brother. It's the same type of stuff. Very violent city, actually. Even Mike Tyson once said Cleveland doesn't get enough recognition, if that's what you want to call it, for how violent it is. Growing up, I had gotten stabbed. I had been messed with by bullies. I had a much more violent life than I would have liked. I always found myself sticking up for people. One time when I was in the 7th grade, we were cutting school. I was in the 7th grade for the twice, second time? I don't know. Either way, I digress. Cutting school with a group of people that day, down walking the railroad tracks, and all day long, this big dude, bigger than all of us, had been picking on this little guy, one of the littlest guys out of all of us. And I'd stayed quiet the whole day. I was always quiet. And towards the end of the day, he was still picking on him, and I was like, will you just leave him the F alone already? I finally spoke up. This dude turns around and starts walking towards me. Now, at that time, I may have been in the 7th grade. I might have been 5'5", 5'6". He was easily 5'11". He was a lot bigger. He's bigger than all of us. And he's walking towards me, and I was scared. Almost like a deer frozen in the headlights. Then when he got within my range, I hit him. He went down, I grabbed him, I hit him again. He gave up and said, I quit, you win. I'm like, okay. I stood him up and walked him over to the person that he'd been picking on the whole day and said, apologize to him. And he apologized, and I let the dude go. He went off on his own, ashamed, whatever. He just got beat up by some small dude. I'd already been in the martial arts quite a few years at that point and been in a lot of real fights. And having been beat up by my stepdad, there weren't really any kids I was very afraid of at that time that I wouldn't actually stand up to, although fear always was a factor. This story is important because many years later, working at a correctional facility, closed maximum security prison, in our monetized justice system, where people that ate people sat right next to people who dealed and smoked a green leaf. Okay, there's a contradiction for you. I watched it happen. This was the 90s. early 90s at that point, 93 when I was in prison. But I ran into this dude. He comes up to me, the kid that was being bullied on. He had caught a case and he was in prison for theft, stealing out of a car or something. And I didn't really remember him right off the bat, but then he told me, I'm like, oh, yeah. He was thanking me. Here he's in prison and he came up to thank me for that one time that somebody in his life stuck up for him. So you never know what your actions are going to do for somebody's life. So, anyway, I joined the Marine Corps during the first Gulf War, Marine Infantry. This is me at Marine Combat Training. Yeah, this was like our 3-day war we had. And look at my booger hook on that bang button. Yeah, that disgusts me now. But anyways, that was me at 19 years old in the Marines. I was stationed at the U.S. Naval Academy. I'm in this picture on the right someplace. So I got to see, some of the nicest parts of the Marines, where we gave ceremonial support and did security for the Naval Station and Naval Academy. Lots of stories I could tell. This is me as a police officer for a local department. And as you can see, my two little ones just would steal all my testosterone from me. All my testosterone. See, what I want to let people in the movement know is a lot of police officers are good human beings. It may not seem like that to us. They're being driven away right now because Operation Hummingbird has been happening for the last 2 decades, just in a different way. A lot of people in police work get disgruntled by the work, and they're just counting the days to when they could leave. My message to you order followers out there is I've been in your place. Don't follow immoral orders. And all the orders that are being given right now are immoral. Have the strength, have the courage to just leave the job. But to people on the other side of the fence, the freedom community, anarchists, we are all still human. And here's a picture of me flexing right after saying all that cool stuff, being an egotistical maniac. I did have a light hand. I was light-handed as a cop. I didn't write a lot of tickets. It got me in trouble. Not real trouble, but it did endear me to my bosses. I once had one of them say, so are you too good to do the little stuff? All you want to do is the big stuff? Because my entire career, I'd only put 2 people in prison. They were both rapists. And I would be all about investigating things that to me were real crimes. That would actually be transgressions against natural law. I was enforcing natural law without even realizing it. I didn't want to mess with victimless crimes. So no, I wasn't too good to do the little stuff. I felt they were too good for me to be doing the little stuff. And I knew damn well when I got off duty, I don't want to be swearing in this, I knew very well when I got off duty that I would be speeding home at least 20 miles over the speed limit, if not more, to have some beer to deal with the aggravation of not only maybe some bad people I might have had to deal with that day, but the backstabbing and backbiting that goes on in this line of work. And anybody in it knows I'm telling the truth. This is me when I worked for a federal facility as police and security services. I didn't endear myself to them either. I wanted to start certain investigations, and that they might not have looked good. So when I got hurt in the line of duty, they threw me under the bus. This is 2012, just to give some time frames here, because I am jumping around a little bit. My advice to order followers is to let you all know they will throw you under the bus. You don't mean nothing to them. Nothing. The painful truth. The painful truth is everybody watching this has seen this slide before by Mark Passio, and it's so true. That every atrocity that's happened in human history has been done at the hands of some kind of order follower, military or police. They try to fool you and make you think what you're doing is virtuous. In 2015, I resigned from order filing. I was done. I didn't resign under stress of, under threat of being fired. I had good employee evaluation. I scored exceptionally the highest marks in community policing and training because I was a trainer. And I just met the basic bottom criteria to be just good enough and passable for enforcement and writing tickets and things of that nature. I didn't like that they took away our, what's the word? It's losing me right now. They didn't want us to have our law-given discretion to enforce certain laws or not enforce others. They wanted to tell us what we could and couldn't enforce against who and who we couldn't enforce it against. I no longer was feeling like a police officer, having been in the military also, who served something greater than myself. I literally felt like I was on the brute squad from The Princess Bride. So 2015, I resigned on my own accord. During this time, I was still having problems on and off with porn. The other things, I was still smoking, I was still drinking. All that was going to change soon. In 2017, I nearly died again. All the years of carrying an 80-pound backpack, all the years of wearing a 22 to 25-pound duty belt had really pretty much destroyed my back. I was 265, 270 pounds. Very out of shape, and I went in to get a back shot, and the solution to my problem ended up being worse than the problem because I was paralyzed from the waist down. I couldn't walk. I couldn't ambulate. They had me on steroids, muscle relaxers, opioids, Dilaudid, every 3 to 4 hours, Dilaudid. I was in the hospital for 8 days. During that time, my breath was giving out on me. My respiratory system was starting to shut down from all that stuff because it depresses the respiratory system. So like I could feel I was very weak. I could feel my lungs just not able to breathe. And I was going to die. And I had to accept I was going to die. And I was 46 years old at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, the last 40 years have gone by quick because I had died when I was 6. And now I was on my deathbed again. And all these thoughts kept coming to me. These thoughts like, I regretted all the pettiness, all the petty arguments, all the petty fighting. I want you to think, 5 of Wands energy if you know anything about the tarot. Petty ego-driven arguments. Chasing my ego identifying with what I did. And then when I wasn't able to do it, ego identifying that I couldn't do it years earlier. And this voice, a repeated mantra that was not my own, kept saying, only love and discernment can drive out hate and fear. Only love and discernment can drive out hate and fear. And I would say today, in today's world, we need to have some love and discernment. And we need to try to get order followers to have love and discernment. I remember telling a young man this back in 2020, very conscious spiritual young man this, and he asked me, did you ever regret love? And I told him, no, I regretted not loving more. I'm going to play something from 2017 when I was in the hospital, and I'm not doing this for any self-pity. I'm wanting to paint a picture here of my journey.
So I got a heating blanket underneath this fucker, and got a TENS unit on to get this shit working. There's my, I guess it's my IV for all my fucking pain meds. Important part this time of day is those little bars back here. Gotta grab these fuckers. Gotta pull myself up. Wait a minute. Okay. Now I pull myself up. You want to talk about humble pie? Go from running a 7-minute mile and being able to kick someone in the head to I can't fucking walk. That's okay. I'm drawing breath, and it's Mother's Day. And it's my birthday, so ouch. We'll get this going. Gotta get that part up. Yeah, so it's like the last couple of days is it's the morning that gets hard. You gotta get this shit moving. Get back on track with this stuff. And Triple H can do it with, what was that song? It's a Beautiful Day. I guess I gotta start playing that song and see if I can do it too. Alright, man. Peace.
Okay. There we go. Let's turn that off. So, moving along, that 2017 nearly dying changed my life. Many spiritual and supernatural things started occurring. Things that I now call simply natural as I'm beginning to understand them better. In 2018, I was praying, meditating, and I decided to re-enter the fray, so to speak. And in the prayer I said to the God Most High, I don't belong to any religious, like, if it's within your will, let me go back to police work. Let me see if I can do more work, do better. Like, can I just do more better? Can I police more better? Kind of like with voting. If I can just vote more harder, I can make a difference. So in December 2018, I got sworn back in. In 2019, January, I worked 2 shifts in a 36-hour period on a Lake Erie Island in a small police department. Then I went on a sabbatical journey in March of 2019, and I read the Kabbalion. I came across Hermetic Principles. And on my drive home, I'm like, oh, let me find out about Hermetic Principles. And I typed in, Hermetic Principles. I wanted to see what people had to say about it. And come across this dude that I didn't know how to take him at first. First couple minutes, I didn't even know if I wanted to listen to all of it. But about 5, 6, 7 minutes into it, he had my full attention. And it was a 50-minute presentation on Hermetic Principles done by Mark Passio. I was like, okay, holy shit. By this point in time, I'm driving up north. I'd probably hit Orlando by that point. I'm like, what else we got going on with this guy? And then I come across his 8-hour natural law presentation. Come across a lot of his stuff. I'm like, okay, wow. There's a Gnostic text where Jesus says, when you start to seek, don't stop until you find. Upon finding, you will be, I don't know that the exact wording, you will be distraught. Upon being distraught, you will be amazed and then become a master of the universe. Like you will be disturbed, not distraught. So don't stop seeking until you find. Upon finding, you will be disturbed. After being disturbed, you'll be astonished, and then a master of the universe. 2018, I wanted to find and marry up the colloquial version of religion with science. Didn't take very long. A few months later, I ran into Mark's work. Something that's another synchronicity, because they just don't stop happening in my life. They don't. This is the 11th slide in this presentation. The Justice card, 11 enumerates to the Justice card. As I begin to talk about running into Mark Passio's work, that's a kind of a synchronicity. And this is where I had to step outside my comfort zone. This is where I decided, okay, I am going to go. I'm actually sorry. This is the 11th card right here. This is the 11th card. This is the 11th slide. I decided to step outside my comfort zone. This guy's work I'd run into in March of that year, September of that year, I was shaking his hand at an event called Anarchist Dan. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous going to an anarchistic event. By this point in time, I already highly identified as an anarchist, as a spiritual anarchist. But I needed to go meet this guy because it was thanks to him that I didn't go into police work. I didn't go back. I never went back. I was still had a commission being held. I never went back and actively worked. The commission was up the following year. I'll have a story about that too. But I remember before going to Anarchist coming across one of his shows called Cosmic Abandonment. And that's when I, still not wanting to be in that job, having left that job because of the contradictions, I still was in a state of cognizant dissonance for about a day after hearing Cosmic Abandonment. This might have been maybe in April, May of that year. At the time, Mark had been doing this type of work for 10 to 12 years. And I remember him saying in that presentation that he had only ever had 2 police officers ever email him to tell him that they stopped their job because of him. Well, Mark, thank you for bringing me on the One Great Work Network, and I want to tell you that if you haven't heard from any other police officers, I can tell you for sure that that number has now risen to 3. Because I didn't go back. And I wanted to shake this guy's hand. I had done the self-help stuff and all the woo-woo, what I now know to be satanic self-help community. At what I was saying about it, a little bit into it, was, wow, this is the self-help community. They're helping themselves, making money in cash, hand over fist. See, I had issues I needed to deal with, and I wasn't going to psychologists around my area for a very good reason. And you can read one of my books to find some of this stuff out. I'll plug that at the end. I was very nervous going to Anarchist, just to be honest. I already knew about the non-aggression principle. I just still wasn't sure if everybody had got the memo. Because as soon as I got there, I didn't let it be a secret that I was an ex-cop. And boy, what was I expecting. And you know, there were a few creatures of the night that did show up. Like that Saturday night. They didn't stay very long. Because the level of consciousness was just too high. People think of anarchy, and this is what they think of. I didn't know what I was going into. I was scared. I was nervous. but I had to step out of my comfort zone and have courage. And little did I know, I didn't run into this. I ran into this. And from that point forward, I just continued to study. And I want to just say, Mark, thank you for your contribution to the improvement of my life. And if it wasn't for your courage and tenacity, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. Not that I lack courage, I just probably wouldn't be doing it. So thank you. May 2020 comes around. I don't know why, but in 2019 in December, I decided I need to get in shape. I went back down to Florida. I lost 50, 60, 65 pounds. I've only gained like 25 of it back. I haven't, I'm going to take that off. But I had changed my life and gotten in really good shape. Well, I came back home and everything was locked down. The whole world had worked together in tandem to put diapers on all our faces and to put us in our homes. Every government of the world. This was strengthening my resolve. And the book Rise from Darkness that I was writing had about 18,000 words in it. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. It had 9,000 words in it, roughly. And that was in May of 2020. By mid-June of 2020, it had 54,000 words. Because I put my mind to finishing it, and I went in a very different direction on self-help. And I was very, instead of being generic on getting over addictions, I was very individualized with that, on how I did it and what I did. Some of them aren't even addictions. They're just bad habits that you need to have within balance. This is part of getting over the shame. And boy, do they try to shame you and weaponize it. But here is a story. I am traveling back to Florida the summer of 2020 with my 12-year-old daughter at the time. As I hit the Florida border, there's a vehicle checkpoint. You want to talk feeling like this was Nazi Germany. It was very surreal to me. There's no way to get around it. And you had the state police, you had the health department, all this stuff. They funnel you right into this checkpoint. And I look over at the dude, and he asks for my ID. And this wasn't a cop. This was a civilian, person for, I guess, the health department. By the way, folks, I worked in a medical facility. Like I said, doctors and nurses are probably right now the most dangerous order followers, right behind military and police, just so you know. And I showed him my driver's license, which still had my badge, my police badge, and ID in it. I was still commissioned, even though I wasn't actively working. My commission wasn't up to 2021 is when it went up. He's seen the badge. And he's like, oh, no, you're good. Go on over to the, so he sent me up to the next guy. And the next guy starts to stop me, and I hear him yell from behind. Now, I had recorded all this on my phone. The next guy, he says, no, he's good. Let him go. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I drove away. And I'm talking into the recording. And I'm like, wow, this little tin must be magic. Because I guess I can't catch a virus by having it. They just let me go. How about that? I knew what I already knew before then, that none of this had anything to do with safety or viruses when they let me just go through. Make sure you back up your work. I know better. As a cop, as knowing the laws of evidence, as all this stuff. I hadn't saved that quickly enough. I thought, I'll get to it when I get back home. Whenever my phone got destroyed, I lost the recording. God, I wish I had it, but I don't. But that story is true. Later on in 2020, just to continue talking about some of the crazy stuff that I have, almost like supernatural things that have occurred. I'll get to that. That's me when I was 21 years old in the Marine Corps. I was in my garage in October 2020, And the light bulb was kind of doing this, kind of going on and off in the garage. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, well, let me see if it's, oh, no, it's tight. It's still doing this stuff. And I had enough other animal synchronicities and shamanic totem signs and different things I talk about in my book that I won't get into now. But I'm like, well, let me change the light bulb. Make sure it's not nothing, you know, whatever. There was nothing supernatural going on. So I changed the light bulb. And I was in there 2-3 days later. And let's just say the light bulb's on. All of a sudden, the light bulb slowly went off and on, 5 times. I told you 5 would come back up in this. And I got goosebumps, and I said, okay, I'm not afraid. Whoever you are, whatever you are, what do you want me to do? And of course there was no answer, and then the light was just on. That wasn't some figment of my imagination, nor was it a bad light bulb. One of many, many synchronicities that would come to pass. Supernatural synchronicities, okay? In October 2021, a year later, hadn't even thought about any of this stuff. Just doing my thing. 2021, I published my book, Rise from Darkness. Who are they? At the time, I was really asking a question. Now I'm got a much better idea on who they are. I went to a very gifted psychic who blew my mind. He didn't use the cards. He just took down my name and my date of birth. And he looked at me and he said, Daniel in the Lion's Den. He's like, don't be afraid. They're going to know you're a friend. Like, okay. He's like, between now and your birthday, look for a surprise. There's going to be a surprise. Chance of a lifetime for you. So be looking for a surprise between now and your birthday. Your grandfather, Anthony, he said my grandfather's name, who's long been passed. He got arrested. His soul passed in early April of 1991. But he's like, your grandfather Anthony wants to ask you about the Marine Corps. And I was like, holy cow. Well, how do you know my grandfather's name? And how? Well, my grandfather died when I was on the rifle range in the Marine Corps. And the day he died, I shot company high out of 500 Marines. Then he told me some stuff about my brother. He mentioned my brother's name. The guy blew my mind. And he said, I know you got some budding gifts. I know you got gifts. I don't know why I know what I know. I just know I'm not of this world, is what he said to me. Well, in, I want to say March of 2022, I checked my spam folder and I had a returned mail from Gamilla Ike, David Icke's daughter. And she said, you know, my dad suggests how would 5 o'clock London time on April 11th be for you? And I was like, this is David Icke, whatever time he wants. Yeah, I'll talk to him. And the funny thing about having this conversation with him is I wasn't starstruck longer than maybe a minute or 2 minutes talking to him. And it was just 2 guys having a conversation about freedom and what's happening in the world. So thank you, Mr. Icke, for everything you've done. I mean, there's people that have given me courage that you're the one who influenced them. So thank you. But if we're going to have freedom under natural law with principles of truth, sovereignty, nonviolence, and love, honestly, as the highest law, and for me that means love under courage, we're all going to have to be able to speak out. And what I'm getting to is if I can rise from my own darkness, improve my life, change and help others and go from being what I would call lunatic to a spiritual anarchist, unfortunately it has to be hyphenated. Then I think anybody can make changes and do this. Believe me, there was nobody more militant and crazy than me. Always had a good sense of humor, was always lightheaded. But guys, and I'm speaking to my military and to my cop friends, if I can leave this line of work because of the disillusioned BS that we're seeing, I didn't swear an oath for the shit that's going on now. My oath was to protect and serve, not the Constitution. I have stretched that oath out to protect and serve all of humanity. So, this isn't romance. This is courage. And remember, opposites are not enemies. They got a war of opposites going on. They want men and women fighting. Opposites aren't enemies. They are merely halves of a forgotten whole. Every person in attendance, every person listening to this has their own hammer and their own flame. Whatever it is, now is the time to ignite it. This isn't romance, this is agape. This is cosmic engineering. Natural law is the spine of our mission. And I'm not talking about only the rules of morality, but also the physics of the soul. Truth is immovable and immutable. Freedom is inherent. It is our birthright. Love is the governing force. Courage is the activator. And sometimes anger is the fuel. Love is the law under all things. I'm currently taking becoming the True Media seminar, so people in that seminar will appreciate this. But if love is the operating system of the universe, then courage is the password. So we have to move forward now. Not as soldiers, not even as adults in our imagination. We need to put our big boy and big girl pants on, but we need to remember that inner child that we have, that imagination, that child that we heal, but still keep the imagination so we can solve problems. Because children hold pure life force, unfragmented consciousness, unbroken imagination, untapped energy. Their minds aren't fully sealed yet. Their nervous systems are still open portals. This is why these evil pieces of trash target our children. This is who we're ultimately fighting for. I'm going to play something here that I did a voiceover in. Please listen to it. They obfuscate morality for their ego and greed. They invade our cities with mind-controlled evil. When technology has betrayed us, we are in a battle for our lives, our freedom, and the future of this planet. Make no mistake, World War III is a spiritual war. When people can't seem to look past politics, and there appears to be little hope, this is the year we all have to collectively show up. The year we all get by our shadows and let the light back in. Every single one of us has this ability to be a hero. The time has come for us to remember our divinity, who we really are, to return to what we are meant to be, a service to others and humanity, to return to nature and reclaim our birthright, that which is freedom. The truth will sound belligerent because it is in direct opposition to lies. So get angry. Get angry if you must, because anger is sacred. And together, we can unite and rise from this darkness. Humanity, assemble. That speaks for itself for me. I have an ending poem. There's a person I ran into on Facebook. I ran into his poem. He had wrote it in 2017 or 2018. His name is Nathan Riddit. Nathan, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, thank you for allowing me to use your poem. It's a very big poem. I'm not reading the whole thing. I'm only reading the last 4 paragraphs of his poem. When I inboxed him and asked him, could I use his poem at Funnel 5? He's in England or London someplace. His immediate response to me was anything for the great work. So thank you, Nathan. This tells me there's hope. People from all over the world can unite, and humanity can indeed assemble. So this is a 4-paragraph poem of the last 4 paragraphs of his poem, and then the 5th one is something that I wrote. So there's that number 5. I had to end with the 5. No crown, no scepter, no robe stitched with gold, but freedom of spirit, both fearless and bold. To do no harm, yet bow to no throne, for agape, pure love, makes your spirit your own. Oh, awaken, dear soul, it is never too late to break from your bondage and challenge your fate. The kingdoms of men, their illusions of power, shall fall to agape, the soul's brightest hour. No change on the mind, no gods carved of stone, for truth is the flame that makes freedom your own. The house slaves may sneer, the tyrants may shake, but the conscious will roar and the sleepers will awake. For love is no weakness, it's justice, it's might, it's agape, pure power, the banisher of night. So rise up, kings of your will, firm and strong, as queens of your heart, where compassion belongs. No master above, no slave shall remain. We've got to do something about the world's pain. I'll finish with my small 5th part here. God, Lord of spirits in the sea of lights, I am very sorry for all my internal fights. I promise to be the very best man I can be. Just please bring my special friend back to me. I'm just a guy who pretends to be Thor, whose head is harder than the hardest wooden door. But if I never see her again, and she never comes back, then God, please bless her anyway, and please bless her pack. Forgive me, O God, for all of my sin. You see, I did not stop fighting until I could finally win. I would never speak out for clout or for fame, but this is my story of the hammer and the flame. I want to thank everybody who took the time to listen to this. My work can be found, the majority of it can be found right here on YouTube. My server isn't up, so I don't have a web page, but the majority of my work is YouTube's letting it stay up now, and I'm careful how I speak. I've learned since 2020. I'm also at the One Great Work Network. I'm open to doing interviews with anybody this year. So if you're interested, hit me up. I also have a radio show every Thursday at 9 o'clock on Revolution.Radio, Coffee Morning Rants with Dan, and I do rant sometimes. They might not be as legendary as Mark's, but they're getting worse and worse. No shade, Mark. I love everything you do, man. I wrote a book called Violence and Ego, Understanding the Functional Principles of Self-Defense. This is for any level, and I never thought it would have so much relevance today. And with my second book, Rise from Darkness, Who Are They? And with that said, I want to thank everybody, and prayers for our world, man. Everybody stay safe. Peace out.